Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us.
It's great to be here.
Today we're tackling those infamous tech interview brain teasers.
Yeah.
Those ones that just make you feel like you need a whole nother degree in puzzleology just to get a job.
Right.
So we're going to be breaking down excerpts from How Would You Move Mount Fuji, Microsoft's Cult of the Puzzle,
Great book.
by William Poundstone.
Yeah.
And don't worry, we're not just going to throw puzzles at you.
Yeah.
We're actually going to unpack the strategies and thinking behind them so you can walk into that interview feeling a lot more confident.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because the book goes into the why behind using puzzles in these interviews.
Yeah.
It's not just about can you solve this riddle, it's more about assessing a certain type of mental agility.
Right, because it's not like memorizing the answer to how many golf balls fit in the school bus is really going to help you write code or manage a project.
Exactly. And the tech world is constantly evolving. What's cutting edge today is obsolete tomorrow. So companies like Microsoft realized they needed to hire people who are adaptable, who can think on their feet and solve problems they've never even encountered before.
Right.
Puzzles kind of simulate that on-the-spot problem solving.
Yeah, you know how in software development there's always a new framework or language popping up?
Yeah.
You need to be able to learn and adapt quickly.
Yeah.
And I guess those puzzles kind of test that.
Yeah, precisely. It's about gauging your problem-solving aptitude, your ability to think critically and logically, but also how you communicate your thought process.
Mm-hmm.
It's less about the specific solution and more about how you arrive there.
Okay, that makes sense, but it still feels kind of high stakes, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, is it also about weeding out people who just can't handle the pressure?
There's definitely an element of that. Hiring the wrong person can be really costly for a company.
Right.
You're talking waste of time, resources, potential damage to team morale.
Ugh. Yeah.
So puzzles are partly about risk management, making sure they don't make a bad hire.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a filter to identify those who wouldn't be a good fit, even if it means overlooking some who might have been.
The book calls it a negative screen.
Okay.
It's about eliminating clear mismatches rather than finding the perfect candidate.
I see. Okay, one thing that really struck me in the book is how it talks about how the value of those puzzle interviews actually decreases as a candidate's experience goes up.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
Well, because for someone with years of experience under their belt, their track record speaks for itself.
Yeah.
You can see the projects they've worked on, the challenges they've overcome, the decisions they've made.
Mm-hmm.
That gives you a lot more insight than some hypothetical puzzle.
So it's like, show me what you've built, not just how you think you might solve something theoretical.
Exactly. It's like comparing a blueprint to a real building. The blueprint gives you an idea, but the building shows you how it actually functions in the world.
Yeah.
So for those more experienced hires, their real-world experience becomes the puzzle and their past performance the solution.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But what about those of us who are maybe just starting out in tech or switching careers
Yeah.
and don't have that real-world experience yet?
Right.
How do we prepare for these puzzle interviews and actually stand a chance?
Well, the good news is most of these puzzles aren't about being like some math genius. You don't need to be a human calculator.
So unless I'm applying to a quant role at an investment bank,
Yeah.
I can leave the Black-Scholes formula at home.
Exactly. For most tech roles, it's really about your logic, your creativity, your ability to systematically think through a problem.
So it's more about the process than the actual answer.
Absolutely. And here's a key tip. Don't get too attached to your first idea.
Okay.
A lot of times those puzzles are designed to trick your brain into jumping to an obvious solution, which is usually a trap.
Oh, yeah. I do that all the time. I overthink things and get stuck on the first solution that pops into my head, even if it's totally wrong.
It's a common reaction. But what interviewers are looking for is someone who can challenge those initial assumptions and explore alternative approaches.
So being able to step back and say, okay, maybe there's a different way to approach this.
Exactly. You need to reframe the problem, think outside the box.
Speaking of thinking outside the box, the book talks about puzzles that involve perfectly logical beings.
Right.
Can you explain what that means and how to approach those?
Sure. So perfectly logical beings, they aren't robots or aliens or anything like that. What's important to remember is they make decisions based purely on logic.
Okay.
They always act in their own self-interest, and they have flawless reasoning abilities.
So they're kind of like playing a game where the goal is to maximize their own benefit while following the rules.
Exactly. And the book uses the example of the 5 pirates splitting gold coins to really illustrate this concept.
Oh, yeah, that one sounds familiar. Can you walk us through it?
Right.
But no spoilers. I wanted our listeners to try and figure it out themselves.
All right, no spoilers. So the setup is you have 5 pirates who need to divide up their loot 100 gold coins.
Okay.
They're ranked in order of seniority, and the most senior pirate gets to propose how to split the gold.
Sounds straightforward so far. What's the catch?
The catch is the other pirates get to vote on the proposal. If at least half the pirates, including the proposer, vote yes, then the plan is accepted and everyone gets their share.
Okay, they don't.
If they don't get enough votes, then the most senior pirate is thrown overboard.
Oh, no.
And the process repeats with the next most senior pirate taking charge.
Wow.
And remember, all the pirates are perfectly logical, greedy, and they want to stay alive.
So the senior pirate has to come up with a plan that will keep him alive, but also get him a good amount of gold.
Exactly. This is where the concept of backward induction comes in. Instead of trying to work forward from the beginning, you need to start at the end and reason your way back. So you start by considering what would happen if only 2 pirates were left. And then you work backward thinking about what each pirate would do in each scenario to maximize their gold and their survival.
So it's like reverse engineering the pirate's motivations.
Yeah, exactly. And another important tip, don't be afraid to challenge your own assumptions.
Okay.
Sometimes the best way to solve a puzzle is to just flip your initial thinking on its head.
So instead of saying, I know this to be true, you say, what if this wasn't true?
Right.
What would happen then?
Exactly. It's about reframing the problem, looking at it from different angles, and being open to new possibilities.
Yeah.
And don't underestimate the power of asking questions.
Oh, I love that tip.
Oh.
So instead of just blurting out an answer, it's better to have a dialogue with the interviewer, ask clarifying questions.
Yeah.
Make sure you fully understand the problem.
Absolutely. It shows that you're genuinely interested in understanding the problem and exploring different solutions. Plus, it gives the interviewer a chance to see how you think and how you communicate.
That's a great point.
It's a win-win.
Okay, those are some great general strategies.
Yeah.
But let's get a bit more specific now.
Yeah.
What are some of the common types of puzzles you might see in a tech interview, and how should you approach them? Okay, so we've talked about like the logic behind these brain teaser questions, but what are some of the actual puzzles we might encounter and how should we approach them?
Well, you've got your classic logic puzzles, like, these test your ability to think step by step, identify patterns, and rule out possibilities.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Can you give us an example?
Sure. Let's say you're given 100 gold coins and you're going to divide them amongst 10 pirates.
Thank you.
These pirates are ranked by seniority, with pirate number 1 being the most senior.
Okay.
The most senior pirate proposes a distribution plan, and all the pirates vote on it.
All right. Sounds simple enough. What's the twist?
Well, here's the catch. If 50% or more of the pirates, including the proposer, vote yes, then the plan's accepted and the coins are divided accordingly.
Okay.
But if the plan fails to get a majority vote, the senior pirate is thrown overboard. And the process repeats with the next most senior pirate.
Oh, wow.
And remember, all these pirates are perfectly logical, they're greedy, and they want to stay alive.
So the senior pirate can't just, like, propose to keep all the coins for himself.
Right.
Or he's fish food.
Exactly. He needs to get enough votes to survive.
Okay, so he has to figure out how to distribute the coins to stay alive, but also get a good amount of gold for himself.
Yeah, that's the puzzle. You got to figure out how pirate number 1 can maximize his share while also making sure he gets enough votes to survive.
This is really making my brain work. I can see how these logic puzzles force you to think strategically and consider all the possible outcomes. What other kinds of puzzles might we see?
Another common type is the design puzzle. So these puzzles assess your ability to think through design choices, weigh trade-offs, and consider the needs of the user.
So it's not just about coming up with a solution that works technically, but also about how it would work in the real world for real people.
Exactly. The book gives an example of a candidate who was asked to design a spice rack for a blind person. You might picture a traditional spice rack with little jars on a shelf, but how would a blind person easily locate and select the spice they need?
Yeah, that's a good point. I never really thought about that. I guess I make a lot of assumptions when I think about design.
And the candidate in the book recognized that. So instead of a traditional spice rack, he proposed a spice drawer.
A drawer?
Yeah. This would let a blind person easily access and organize their spices using touch and spatial memory.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
It shows he was really thinking about the user experience and how to make something truly functional.
Exactly. That's what interviewers are looking for in these design puzzles. Someone who can think critically, creatively, and empathetically.
Okay, so we've got logic puzzles, we've got design puzzles. Is there a third category?
Yeah, there are what are often called impossible questions.
Ooh, I like those.
These questions often seem like they have no solution.
Uh-huh.
or they require you to think completely outside the box.
Okay, give me an example.
How would you weigh a jet plane without using scales?
Wait, a jet plane weighs tons. You'd need a scale the size of an aircraft carrier.
That's what they want you to think. The interviewers want to see if you can break free from conventional thinking. The solution actually involves using physics, something called displacement.
Okay, I'm listening. How does displacement help us weigh a jet plane?
Well, if you were to put the jet plane in a large body of water, like a dry dock that you could fill up, it would displace an amount of water equal to its own weight.
Okay.
You could then measure the volume of water displaced and use that to calculate the weight of the jet plane.
Wow, that's so clever. I never would have thought of that.
Mm.
It shows that sometimes the most creative solutions come from looking at the problem in a totally different way.
Exactly. These impossible questions are meant to see if you can think laterally, challenge assumptions, and come up with innovative solutions.
I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today. We've covered why these brain teaser interview questions exist and explored different types, from logic puzzles to design challenges to those seemingly impossible questions. What's the most important thing for our listeners to remember as they get ready for their tech interviews?
I think the key takeaway is that these puzzles aren't really about getting the right answer. They're about showing your thought process, your problem-solving skills, and your ability to think critically and creatively.
So it's not about memorizing solutions. It's
Yeah.
about honing those problem-solving skills and being able to explain your thinking.
Exactly. Embrace the challenge.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to think out loud, ask clarifying questions, and most importantly, have fun with it. You might surprise yourself with the creative solutions you come up with when you think outside the box.
I love that. And on that note, we'll leave you with one final thought to ponder. If you had to design a puzzle that perfectly captures your own problem-solving style, what would it be? Think about it. Maybe sketch it out and see what it reveals about how you approach problem-solving.
That's a great challenge. And who knows, maybe your puzzle will be the one that stumps the next generation of tech giants.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.